Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an email that was sent from a subscriber. And guys, this is definitely a story that I think many of you guys are really going to enjoy. This is a story I think a lot of you guys will be able to identify with, particularly you guys that are older, that have been married, had kids and all that. This is a story about a guy who definitely lost his way for a while. He essentially went down a downward spiral when a very common but unfortunate event happened in his life, and definitely lost his way, and it impacted his health, his manhood, his purpose, and especially the relationship he had with his wife. Because prior to this event, he had a very good thing going with her early on, because this guy was a masculine guy, on his purpose, on his game, all that. And this one event, as you're going to see, went pretty badly. However, you're going to see here, thanks to people in his life, like his family and coworkers and friends, they were able to help him give him a good kick in the pants to turn things around and get his strength back, his man card back, and he was able to set everything straight in his life, as well as laying down the law with his wife, who was once really awesome, but then changed towards him and got things back on track. So it's a really good one here for you guys. And there's definitely a lot of themes here that are important to talk about that I go over all the time about staying on your purpose, staying on your grind. Even if things are tough, a man needs to lead. He needs to be a leader on many fronts, but especially if he's married, because if he doesn't lead, his wife's not going to find him very attractive and not respond to that very well. And being on your grind, your purpose, and never backing down. Really good one here. Good feel-good story. And he even titled this, because it's literally a story, short story. He titled it, How I Lost and Regained My Masculinity and My Marriage. He says here, Hello SSM. I'm writing to share my story of failure and success as both a man and consequently a husband. I feel that my story can help guys who find themselves in a similar situation to mine. Even though this story involves a relationship, it is basically about what happened when I lost my purpose and didn't do enough to regain it. I will be honest about my failures, how I fixed them, who helped me along the way. There was even a bit of surprise help from a very unexpected source that went a long way to turning things around. Yeah, what I like about this story is this guy admits and acknowledges where he effed up. And he did F up a lot, but, he didn't know any better, but now he knows, and he's sharing this to help you guys to not make the same mistake. He says, I need to provide a little bit of background before I get to the meat of the story. When I first started dating the woman who would become my wife, let's call her Amanda, I did it from a position of masculine strength. I was in my late 20s and she was in her mid-20s. I had a successful career, I'd gotten 2 promotions, and several performance raises. Her career is largely irrelevant because guys aren't impressed by a woman's career, but she was stable and living on her own. I did not usually respond quickly to texts during the workday or even some evenings. I maintained my hobbies and friendships with my male buddies. I even told her that we were free to date other people during the first few months. I never did because taking one woman out is enough difficulty, but she didn't need to know that. So right there in the first paragraph, his relationship with the girl became his wife. Notice that. He was on his grind, on his purpose. She was dead last. He took his time to respond to her text. He took her out and they had a good time. He hung out with his bros. And yet still, she was chasing after him. This is what all guys need to do. The problem is most guys have to do the opposite. They make her the top of the priority list and put their goals and ambitions dead last. And how do those things always work out? Not very well. So you're seeing here, he's a masculine guy, takes charge. So it's not a big surprise that he's able to attract this feminine woman. But watch what happens later in the story, guys. Keep this in mind when he stops acting masculine and being a leader. Watch what it does to her attraction towards him. Amanda didn't mind any of this. I took her out on nice dates and our relationship progressed, but I refused to be drawn in too deeply, too quickly. Very smart, he took his time with her. I made sure I met her family and friends and spent time with them. Her father was a retired master carpenter who had owned his own business. Her mother was working in an office when I first met her, but she retired very soon after. Amanda's parents were still married and neither had any previous marriages. She doesn't have any siblings, but I met and hung out with her best friends, Jen and Amy. Amy was engaged to a decent guy that I will call Sam. I was eventually Amanda's +1 to their wedding. Sam and I never became close because we have different interests, but they did not go out partying and Amy is not wild at all. Jen is a quiet woman who is not romantically inclined in any way. She prefers to read books, mostly mystery genre. These girls will often read the same books together and discuss their theories on who did it. None of them spend a lot of time on social media and only use the Book of Faces, Facebook, to post ideas in their little book club. Okay, so her friends, who we got to know, because that's important, as I always talk about, aren't partiers. They're not carousel writers. They have book clubs. They sound kind of old-fashioned to me, but hey. So his screening process on her family, on her friends, so far so good. And it stays so far so good. Amanda seemed to be a nice, stable, responsible woman, but I did not rush anything. I dated her for 3 years before I proposed. There you go. He took his time. None of this 6 months and I'm going to propose bullshit. I would have waited longer than 3 years, but 3 years, not too bad, and then you'll see it takes even more time. I wanted a lot of time to make sure she wasn't putting on a show. I even insisted on at least a 1-year-long engagement period. After all, some women go crazy during the engagement or bachelorette party. I also wanted a fairly big wedding. For one, I could afford to let my future wife be a princess for a day, but I had other reasons. I wanted to see if the stress of planning a wedding brought out any bridezilla tendencies or other red flags. Bro, the way you behaved back in the day, before you got with her and before you got married, you're acting like your behavior is like someone that has been studying this type of material for a while. But this all naturally, it came natural to you. It's impressive. It goes on, no bridezillas. We've all seen it all happen. I was ready to walk if Amanda became a monster, but that did not happen. She even saved money and let her dad show off his newly discovered talent for cooking, something he picked up in retirement, by letting him serve his famous fried chicken and sides. Hey, the hell with having the chicken or fish at a wedding. I'll take fried chicken. That'd be awesome. Things continued to go very well for the first part of our marriage. Since she was nearing 30, we knew we wanted multiple kids, and we decided to start trying right away. And soon she was pregnant with our first child. And then 2007, 2008 happened. My industry was hit very hard by the crash, and layoffs became extremely common. For you guys that are a little bit younger, in 2008, that's when that was the big market crash brought on by the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers and the whole housing bullshit that went on. And that led us into what was now labeled the Great Recession. And it was definitely a time of great uncertainty for a while. And overnight, companies were laying off left and right. It went from booming to all of a sudden boom, just like that. And for a lot of people, it was a scary time. And that type of thing, job losses, can have a very negative impact on a family if not handled properly. I managed to survive 4 rounds of layoffs, but eventually my number came up. I was crushed. I had a very pregnant wife who had quit her job with my blessing to be a stay-at-home mom and kid coming in a couple months. I will admit that I did not handle myself well at all during that time. I allowed myself to become depressed and spend too much time playing video games. Even my buddies were telling me to stop, but I didn't. This was my failure. But Amanda was also absolutely no help. I know that she was about to give birth and had her own issues to deal with, but there was not even a single word of encouragement or any form of support from her. So, understandable, you were bummed because you lost your job and you got a kid a couple months away from being born. Lots of guys go through that, but you can't give up. And she should have been there encouraging you, but remember, she's a feminine woman. And you, when you met her, all the time was a masculine, strong guy who was a leader. But you're not behaving like a leader anymore if you're depressed all the time and using your spare time to be playing video games as opposed to cranking out the applications and going to interviews, anything you can get. Because she's seeing her strong guy kind of defeated. And that is going to turn a woman off and make her very anxious. And that is going to make her dry up down south faster than the freaking Sahara Desert in July. Okay? But when a guy's confident and taking charge, being a leader, then everything's flowing down south like the Niagara Falls. And she's like, fuck me, fuck me, fuck me. So you're going to see here how things go negative because he stops being the leader and take charge. Everybody can go through this shit, but it's unfortunate and in many ways unfair. I can't believe I'm actually using that word, that a guy has to be strong all the time. But the second he stops, that's when a lot of women, feminine women, they get really anxious and uncertain and they pull away from the guy. For your relationship guys, experience this, you know what I'm talking about. It is what it is, unfortunately. I mean, I'm just letting you know. Not the relationship channel, but I'm letting you guys know. I've been in enough relationships to know this shit. Guy always has to take charge, and he knows this, and you're going to see. But I'm going to add, she should have been more encouraging and helpful to him. But anyhow, so he says here, I was able to drag myself around a bit and battle to help my family. I had served in the military before I met Amanda, so I had my GI Bill. I took a low-paying job just to keep some money coming in and used the money from the GI Bill to get a master's degree. Okay, so you're doing something. That's good. This took about 2 years, and for the most part, because those 2 years were awful. The intimacy between Amanda and I was virtually non-existent. My depression deepened to the point where all I did was drag myself to work, drag myself to class, and play video games. What I tell you, the second the guy stops being the leader and the masculine, strong guy he once was, dries up like the Sahara Desert in July. And like I said, I'm glad you're doing something that's good, but still, she could have been more supportive, absolutely. But that's how some of these things go, unfortunately. Once I graduated, Amanda decided now that'd be a good time for another child. You're barely making any money, but now it's a great time to have another child? See, she's making this her purpose. She's pulled away from you, and she's now putting all her energy into the kids. Now, there's a lot of things this guy also could have done differently, as I've mentioned, but also, he needed to also be the leader and lay down the law with her. Because if they're not sleeping together, then what the hell is the point of being together? Roommates. They're turning into a stereotypical loveless, sexless marriage. And no dude wants to be with that, right? So he's letting her kind of dictate how things go. Never good. Feminine women don't want to be the leaders. They want the guy to lead. And the longer it takes for the guy to go back to being the way it is, the more difficult they're going to make it for him, as you will see. I know you guys are probably like, shut up, SSM, I want to hear the story. But remember, I use this as a teaching tool to help dudes, aside from entertainment. Okay. It says here, but I said nothing and let Amanda lead this part of the marriage. Big mistake. I was also desperate for some physical affection from my wife. Intimacy returned, I started to come out of my funk. Amanda even noticed and started to actually be encouraging again. Because you're coming out of your funk and becoming a leader again, slowly. A little bit of it. It took several months for her to get pregnant again. However, once she was pregnant, the intimacy dried up immediately. I allowed myself to fall into an even darker depression. I made no move to hold Amanda accountable. Men must hold women accountable and call them out on their bullshit and lead. If they don't, the women will walk all over them. And the more the woman walks all over the guy, the more respect she loses for the guy, and the more she'll walk all over him, and more testing and bullshit. And if it keeps up, she cheats or leaves. It's fucked up. But the second the guy grows a pair and starts taking charge and calling her on her crap and leading, as you'll see eventually, night and day. She said she was 32 and worried about the baby. I just blindly accepted that. I was also dealing with constant rejection of job applications, was being stuck in a dead-end job. I managed to save up a bunch when I was single, but that was mostly gone by now. It looked like I was going to break the promise I made to Amanda that she could be a stay-at-home mom that I made when we were engaged. Amanda was very angry about this and blamed me for her pregnancy. Blamed you, she's the one that wanted to be pregnant. That was now her purpose in life. You'll recall that it was her idea. Yes, we do. But I did not push back or set a boundary. Smack. You gotta set boundaries. You gotta set terms. Otherwise, they'll walk all over you just like little kids. The lack of support from my wife, my own attitude, and my rudderless career path all pushed me near self-ending. It is here that things started to turn around. I was talking to my sister about job issues. She works on the hiring side of HR, and she asked me if I had thought about a trade skill. I had not. She said the only jobs that she had problems filling were blue-collar trade jobs. She advised me to take some of my remaining GI Bill money and get a certification in a trade. I looked at several and decided to go for heavy equipment operator because some of those could be done pretty quickly. During this time, Amanda gave birth to our second child, but our relationship remained effectively dead. I must stress I did take a lot of blame here because I let this go on. Yes, you did, but I respect you for being accountable, because there's not a whole lot of that anymore these days. I graduated the course and was hired almost immediately at a small warehouse to be a forklift driver. It was basic forklift driving, but paid better than retail work, and it was experience. After a few months there, I got an entry job at a warehouse for a major airplane maintenance and repair company. This wasn't just one warehouse, it was an entire complex. And I wasn't just driving a standard 3,000-pound forklift. I was operating equipment that could move more than 15,000 pounds. Holy shit. That had to be fun driving those around. Let me tell you, those warehouses are a man's world. They are dusty, dirty, open to the elements, and crawling with all sorts of animals. I saw rats and mice on a regular basis. Snakes and skunks were rarer, but still fairly normal. Dust was everywhere. I'd come home gray from the dust and sweating just about every day, but that was still the job I had, and I had the most fun of my life. I was back among some real dudes who didn't give a crap about what the corporate thought of how we spoke or acted. What, they would ask? Are they coming down here in their suits to move our shit? As you can imagine, there was not a lot of women in this sort of work. The one woman who was there was also a veteran and the infantry in the Army National Guard. Off-color jokes, belching, and pranks were the order of every day. My godfather, may he rest in peace because he passed away just a few weeks ago, he was a union guy, and he worked in factories his whole life as a union rep. And the stories he used to tell me, things that used to go on in the factory with those guys, oh my God, the pranks they pulled on each other and all that is hilarious. Anyway, smoking or chewing were very common, though not required. These guys knew their value, not just to the company, but also to their families and communities, and weren't afraid to fight for what they deserved. Simply put, without them, all those suits wouldn't have planes to fly on to their fancy meetings, and all sorts of product would sit moldering on a tarmac somewhere. Yep, pretty much. Being in such an environment helped me tremendously. First, these guys don't have time for depression or depressed people, and they got me out of it with some good old-fashioned blue-collar therapy. They pushed me until I snapped and did something about it. I can't say I was gracious about it, but I think they could sense a good man somewhere in there. I did my work and did it well, so that was in my favor. But I had the same defeatist attitude I had for years now. Weakness and defeatism were and not tolerated there. Nope. You get around a bunch of tough, working class guys, they have no time for bullshit, no time for weakness, and they will smack that shit out of you just the same way I do here on this channel, whether it's verbally or physically. He says, so they slapped me around, sometimes literally, until I put a stop to it. I also changed physically. I put on a ton of weight during my depression and was quite out of shape. When I weighed myself, I was 255 at 6 feet tall. And I knew I had lost the weight already. By the time I left the warehouse, a year later, I had lost down to 202 pounds and had much larger arms than when I had started. Good, bro. That is awesome. Gotta take care of your health. But when people get depressed, they stop working out, they stop moving, they eat a lot of garbage to feel better temporarily. It makes the situation worse. But all that physical labor and getting off your butt, that really helped. Eventually, word got out that I had an MBA and a bit of experience in logistics and process improvement / unit coordination through the military. The company decided they wanted me to coordinate between the logistics planning office and the warehouses in order to improve order fulfillment times. This was a significant bump in pay, so I sadly said goodbye to my warehouse job. You're getting back on track, man. You're getting your manhood back one step at a time. This is good. My career was back on track, but things with Amanda were still dead in the bedroom. It had now been over 2 years since we had been intimate regularly. 2 years, bro. It is high time as you're getting your manhood back to start laying down the law with your wife. Either pretty much we're going to start acting like a romantic couple, or I'm moving on. But now my confidence had been restored. I was not going to stand for this any longer. However, I had no idea how to address this. It had simply been so long I had asserted myself in my marriage that I had forgotten how. I finally, with much embarrassment, went to my parents for advice. They had been married for nearly 40 years, so I thought it would be good to get advice from them. I started by talking to my dad first. He told me that I need to stand up. The men were supposed to be leaders, and that leadership required being bold and assertive. Absolutely, Dad. But it was my self-described effeminate mom who really drove home what I needed to do. She didn't waste time or mince words. She straight up asked when was the last time Amanda and I had you-know-what. When I told her around 18 months, she blew up at me. She said I was being weak and allowed Amanda to walk all over me. She was right. I still remember part of the conversation today. She said, son, marriage is not platonic. If she refuses to be intimate, then you don't have a marriage. He said, are you saying a wife doesn't have a choice, Mom? You always said you're an effinist. His mom says, I'm a proper effinist, not this trash that runs around today calling themselves effinists. Real effinism is about choice and equality. If a woman wants to choose to deny her husband sex, then that's her choice to make. However, she needs to take responsibility for the results of that choice. If Amanda doesn't want to have you-know-what with you, you need to divorce her. Damn, I like your mom. Telling you to lay down the law with your woman. This is not the typical effinist of today. And I also like your mom that she's bashing today's effinists. He said, okay, I'll talk to her. And the mother says, no, don't talk to her. Take a couple of days to think about it. Ask if your marriage is worth saving. And if it is, then tell her what she needs to do to meet your needs. See that? Tell her. Not ask. Tell. If she won't, then your marriage is done. So, I ended the phone call and decided to sit down and think. There was no doubt that my marriage was basically dead at this point. But I didn't want to simply give up. Dad was right, men need to be leaders, and part of being a leader means accepting responsibility for your own actions. Mom was right, a sex-less marriage is no marriage at all. I had allowed myself to fall to pieces after losing my job, and that was my fault. I withdrew from my family and became addicted to video games, and that was my fault as well. I failed to get a decent job and drifted aimlessly for a while, and that was also my fault. Amanda had her own faults. She shunned me as soon as I originally lost my job. She threw herself into childcare and refused to help me with anything, have anything to do with me. Basically, she abandoned me. However, I let her abandon me and did not check her behavior. That was my fault. Dude, I have great respect for you for acknowledging where you screwed up. And that is the first thing people got to do to be able to fix themselves and move forward. Identify where they're going wrong. And that's exactly, you hit the nail on the head multiple times. What I told you in the beginning. Okay? You stopped being the man you were that attracted her in the first place. You lost your man card on multiple fronts. Sure, everybody can fall in depression and feel bummed and feel like not like a man anymore because they lost their job and can't provide for their family. But falling into a dark depression and then distracting yourself with video games or whatever that may be, TV, video games, ping pong, I don't know what the hell it is, that's not going to help the situation. I guarantee you that you lost your job, and if she saw you actively trying to get not just meaningless jobs, like actually serious jobs, and not playing the video games, not being depressed all the time, I guarantee you her treatment of you would have been different. Okay? All guys can lose their jobs, but if the guy is working, being the same man, even though he's stressed inside, but he's keeping his cool and being the same masculine man leader to get things done for the family, it'd been a different situation. I know you know this now, but I'm pointing this out for any other guy who may fall into the situation. And of course, she wasn't helping either. She should have been more supportive, more loving and all that. And also, you need to lay down the law with her. Because if a man doesn't lay down the law and take shit, she's going to keep dishing out shit because they want their guy to call them on their crap. They want a man with balls, not a fucking hoo-ha down there. Because of my fault and in memory of the relationship that Amanda and I had before all this, I decided I would give her an opportunity to work with me on fixing our marriage. In other words, one chance. That's it. I know that you, SSM, would not have and in fact would have left long at this. Then, good Lord, I can't say this. I know that you, SSM, would not have and in fact would have left long before this point. But Amanda had been a good girlfriend, fiance, and wife to me before. However, I also need to see if she had done something irreparable, such as cheating. It is here that I found out that I had been helped by another unexpected source. Jen, Amanda's friend who is not romantically inclined, interceded almost immediately and made it her mission to keep Amanda from doing something stupid. Wow, for once, the story is the female friend of the wife or girlfriend is actually helpful. This is a good friend. She'd invite Amanda over to hang out and let our kids play. This was a major sacrifice on Jen's part because she cannot stand kids. I think Jen knew that Amanda loved at least the man I used to be and wanted to give me a chance to become him again. So she bought time and made sure Amanda didn't do anything stupid. This is why it's so important to make sure your wife or girlfriend has decent friends. I've been saying that pretty much since I started the channel. All you guys, relationship guys, got to watch who you're wife or girlfriend's friends are, or the female coworkers or whatever, because they're going to influence her big time. Jen, and to a lesser extent Amy, since she was busy with her own family, circled around Amanda and prevented disaster. All my examination took place over the course of a month. Now I was ready to have a talk with Amanda. Now we're getting to the good part, guys. This is getting the part. He's getting his man card back, but now he's got to truly assert his man card on his wife. And he does here, so just watch. I told Amanda that we need to talk away from the kids. This was likely to be a long talk, so we need to find a babysitter because it was also going to be uncomfortable for both of us. She looked a little uncertain and said this, and I said this and agreed to call Amy and Sam to see if they could arrange a play date with our kids and theirs. They agreed to that, and we sent our kids over to their house on that Saturday. Now it was time to see if Amanda was willing to work with me to save our marriage. I didn't mince words, and I didn't back down. I straight up told her that we need to start having you-know-what regularly again. I said that we had barely been intimate at all since she had become pregnant with our second child, who was over a year old at this point. Amanda started to yell and get aggressive towards me like she had before. But this time I cut her off immediately, saying, "Don't you dare shout at me." I still chuckled at the expression on her face. It was shock beyond even the surprised Pikachu face. This was a sort of stunned, slack-jawed, blank-eyed shock that said her brain was completely rebooting. You were calling her on her shit. You snapped back at her. You probably, when she would lose her temper and yell at you before, you'd probably cave like a little freaking dog with his tail between his legs, but not now. That shocked her. And by the way, guys, you're going to see, she's going to keep testing him to see if he's the strong guy she deep down hopes he is. I asked her for, or Reed begged for sex before this, and her raging and yelling had always made me back off. This calm yet firm assertiveness took her totally off guard. She then said it wasn't a priority for her at this point because she needed to take care of the kids. She made her kids the purpose, not you, her husband, and there was no sex going on because she lost all attraction for you because you were no longer the masculine man you once were. Now you're starting to act like the masculine man, but she's not so sure yet, so she has to keep putting up resistance and testing and testing and testing. The more they've lost attraction for you, the more tests they're going to be. But don't worry, guys. Our hero prevails. I responded by calmly saying that we needed to get divorced. Once again, the brain reboot face appeared, and that's when her face was more uncertain. She asked why. I told her what my mom said, though I didn't divulge my source, that a sexless marriage is no marriage at all. Amanda tried to deflect by saying that intimacy wasn't comfortable since her second pregnancy. Yeah, sure, because there's no other women out there in the world that like to hook up after having kids. Sure. What a load of crap. I replied by asking if she'd seen a doctor. She said she hadn't, and I replied that she needed to get on the phone right now and schedule an appointment. She tried tears then, and I told her to cut the waterworks. She asked if I would really leave her. I responded that basically she has already left me. If not in name, then certainly in spirit. She then said I needed to start seeing to her needs, such as taking her out on dates and helping with the kids. I had been neglecting these, and I think Amanda was trying to regain some moral high ground by thinking I'd refuse. Instead, I agreed, and even apologized for neglecting her, for withdrawing from her and allowing myself to be depressed. But I demanded that Amanda apologize for not trying to help me and essentially abandoning me to my depression for years, only coming to me to mate with me until she had the pregnancy that she wanted. In short, I told her what I expected and needed for our marriage, and didn't let her pull any of her usual BS moves to get me to back down. Held her and made myself accountable for the failing state of our marriage. Good for you, brother. Good for you for not backing down and standing up for yourself. If you hadn't gone through that experience at work where you got your man card back and the guys you worked with and all helped you, you wouldn't have had the balls to do this. Because you've obviously been worn down over the years. But you're becoming the man that you were deep down inside, the man you always were. See this, guys? He's laying down the law. See how she's testing him? See how she's putting up all his resistance? Well, she can't do it too long. He's showing who the man in this relationship is, and it ain't her. We went out for a walk in the park like we used to when we were dating after that conversation. And yes, we went to the bedroom after we got home. Imagine that. That conversation, he's laying down the law, saying what's what, and things don't change. I'm divorcing you. And she tested and put up resistance. They go out for a walk, and they're back to hooking up later that night. So much for that whole, oh, it's not comfortable anymore since having the kid. See? He became the man. He started showing her the man who he used to be. And all of a sudden, what I said was like the Sahara dried up in July, became Niagara Falls. Fuck me, fuck me, fuck me. Right there. Says here, I won't say our intimate life returned to the way it was before my depression because we had small children and those kids take up a lot of time. But I insisted and enforced that boundary often in the early days of our repair efforts. Laying down the law. I worked hard at my job, I took more responsibility as a father, and I took Amanda out on dates. I told her what I expected from her, I started to discipline the kids and get involved in their schooling and activities. Basically, I became a man again. There you go. You became a man again, and she started becoming the woman that she was with you initially again. Men gotta lead. The women can't lead. And I found that I need to enforce the boundaries of intimacy at least once a week, less and less, because Amanda started becoming more and more available when her schedule allowed for intimacy. Translation, you didn't need to enforce it anymore because she became more and more attracted to you as you became more and more the man she fell in love with and met in the first place. There you go. It has been several years since this situation was fixed. Our kids are much older, and things are going just fine with Amanda and myself. I'm sorry if the ending with Amanda seems a bit rushed and anticlimactic, but there really is no magic trick to this. Be strong and masculine and enforce boundaries. If she strays, then she strays. If she stays, then she stays, and if she leaves, then she leaves. There you go. Indifferent, take it or leave it attitude. I hope this story helps some guys out. I think the first part is a pretty good example of how to date women and find out if she is wife material. It was. I also hope that my failures can help some guys who are going through tough times because it seems like there's a lot of that out there right now. He says, guys, don't let one piece of bad news knock you out, even if it's really bad news. Men work best when we are grinding on our purpose. Never be aimless. Never be depressed. A man should be too busy to get depressed. It's okay to be in a funk, but you must pull yourself out of it. And to your relationship guys, you must lead and set boundaries with your wife or girlfriend. If any woman wants you to lead, you can't be afraid to do so. Don't make the mistakes I did. It took a lot of effort to fix things, and I did almost lose everything. The end. Great story, brother. That is a really good story, not just for relationship guys, but for any guy. Purpose. Keeping your man card. Leading. Being masculine. All that. The only women that don't respond to that are the masculine women, but nobody in this channel likes those G.I. Jada types, so, there you go. But on your grind and your purpose, and like I said in the beginning, a life event happened that could happen to any guy at any time who lost his job. And you got to stay on your grind instead of being sad about it and depressed and finding an outlet like video games or drinking or eating. What he should have done was just, and I know this is tough, okay, lost the job, I'm going to take care of it. Reassured her, made her realize nothing to worry about, and application after application, resume, whatever the hell it is, interviews, everything you can to show you're making the effort to get that new job back on track so she doesn't have to worry. That way she doesn't have uncertainty and pull away from you. And not wasting time sitting around playing video games or watching television or whatever you do to distract and being depressed. That is the worst thing you can do. Like you said, be too busy to get depressed, okay? So for you guys out there that have problems like that may fall into a routine of depression or whatever when things get tough, you got to find a way to get out of it. I know it's hard because guess what? Depression runs in my family. My grandfather had it. My mom has it. I got it. And I had it in my life impact me sometimes and hold me down. But I learned to identify it early and not fall down that track. But it's taken a lot of life experience to do that. So very important lessons in this story. And of course, laying down the law with the woman. Women, feminine women, want a masculine man that takes charge, that checks them on their bullshit, as I say all the time, and also is the leader. And you see what happens when the guy stops doing that. But you also see what happens when the guy starts to lead and starts laying down the law. And there you go. So really good story there. Great comeback story. Great job laying down the law. And give your mom and dad a hug for helping you out in that department. And don't forget those guys that helped you out in the job at the warehouse and all that to help you also get your man card back. So I'm glad you wrote the story, and I'm glad you're doing well. All right, guys, that is it for today. It's a long one, so I'm glad you stuck with me here. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Let this guy know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.